and by praising Allah, our Creator, and giving Him thanks. And we ask Him to send His most beautiful and perfect salutations and blessings on His final messenger and servant, Muhammad. I greet you with Islamic greeting, Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon all of you, physical peace, peace of mind, and spiritual peace. It is an honor and privilege to be with you all today as we come together in the spirit of unity and understanding. We're here to discuss the challenges facing religion in our society today, and there are a lot of them. And in a world often marked by division, it is gatherings like these that remind us of the common threads that bind us as human beings, regardless of our diverse faith backgrounds. A lot has happened since we first announced this program 2 short months ago in God's house, and testifying that we are all God's creation, and that all of God's creation deserves respect, honor, and dignity. Allah God Almighty says in the Quran, the Muslim holy scripture, "O human beings, we have indeed created you from a single male and female, and turned you into tribes and nations that you may truly get to know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you are the most God-conscious. Allah is truly all-knowing, all-aware." This beautiful verse affirms a fundamental principle and truth that Allah teaches in the Quran, that when the Almighty created us, He had intended for us to be different. The true purpose behind this design is for us to see the blessing and gift in those differences. And to recognize our differences in itself is a sign of God's presence and power. To recognize that we can never grow and blossom until we deeply and intimately know one another, so that we can learn about and appreciate the gifts that each of us brings. So let us pray. O Allah, help us remember you every day in everything we do, big or small. Our Creator, help us see everything around us as a sign of your magnificence, infinite wisdom, and perfection. O Allah, help us see the truth as truth and allow us to follow it. Help us see falsehood as falsehood and allow us to avoid it and reject it. O Allah, in times of trial and tribulation, let the mercy and patience you have instilled in us overcome our anger and frustration. Let us never be despondent or lose hope. O Lord of all things in the heavens and earth, help us honor our neighbors and allow us to increase our bonds of friendship and humanity for your sake. Ameen. So tonight's program is an interfaith panel discussion on the top challenges facing religion in our society today. It's a challenge that we all face, no matter what faith tradition we come from. When you look at challenges, they come from so many angles and at so many different levels. Whether it is because of mistrust, skepticism, consumerism, or narcissism, people just aren't connected to their Creator and don't find God relevant in their everyday lives. Part of the problem that our congregants and our entire community face also stems from a lack of purpose. Without purpose, we end up roaming around aimlessly. God tells us in chapter 51, verse 56 of the Quran, that He didn't create us except to worship Him, thus divining our purpose for us. He, the Almighty, also warns all of us not to get too bedazzled by worldly glitter and gold, when He says in chapter 31, verse 33, "O humanity, be mindful of your Lord, and beware of a day when no parent will be of any benefit to their child, nor will a child be of any benefit to their parent. Surely Allah's promise is true, so do not let the life of this world deceive you, nor let the chief deceiver, the devil, deceive you about Allah." To help us discuss the problem and hopefully some solutions based upon the teachings of their faith traditions, we have 4 esteemed speakers. We have Sheikh Nazir Faruki, Pastor Les McIntosh, Reverend Dionne Hall, and Rabbi Mark Perman. So Sheikh Nazir Faruki is just joining us in the past few weeks, I think 3 weeks now, actually. He's joining us from outside of Boston, originally from London, where he did his formal training in Islamic studies and memorization of the Quran. Pastor Les McIntosh is the lead pastor of Impact Ministries in Hagerstown. He's also a board member of HARC, and Impact Ministries is a member of HARC. Reverend Dionne leads Grace United Methodist Church in Hagerstown, and Grace United Methodist Church is a member of HARC as well. Rabbi Mark Perman has served as the spiritual leader of Congregation B'nai Abraham in Hagerstown since January 22. He is also vice president of HARC's board of directors, and Congregation B'nai Abraham is a member of HARC. So without further ado, we'll get started. I just wanted to kind of give you guys some structure here. So basically the format will be, we'll have 10 minutes of reflection on the topic by each of our panelists, followed by 20 minutes of questions and answers. So you all have an index card on your seat. There's some pens floating around as well if you don't have one. So just write your questions on them, submit them to me, and then we'll try to challenge our speakers with those questions tonight. But please keep the questions relevant to tonight's topic, which again is the challenges that are facing religion in our society today. All right, so we'll start with Rabbi Mark Perman. We'll go from right to left.
Oh, I'm nervous. What are you doing?
You're good.
She wants, no, okay. First, thank you, Dr. Shahab, for this invitation and for setting up this program. You know, this was set up prior to the events that we know about, and I think it's very important that we continue going through with it and doing it and making a statement that we're all together here in this community. Despite our differences, we come together for common purposes to serve the community and to serve our God, our shared God. I thought I would just start a little bit with my background. That I grew up in what you call a conservative Jewish home, which means we were kosher at home, but outside you could eat whatever you want. So, I mean, you know, we tried. So I grew up in that setting. I went to Hebrew school. I went for a year in second grade to yeshiva, which is like the Orthodox training ground. But everything I experienced at that time was sort of what is being taught to me or fed to me by parents, by teachers, all good things. But I didn't personally feel a connection to it. I felt like this was the identity I was being given, this is the tradition I was meant to follow, and this is what I'm supposed to do to be a good Jewish person and so forth. So I followed that and felt connected that way, but it was only when I was 25 and my father passed away suddenly that I began to get involved in a synagogue that moved and inspired me and made me feel connected to being Jewish, and not only to being Jewish, but being spiritual. And I think spirituality is a universal language. So that really was what brought me. So the contrast for me is that I can sort of understand those folks who are not that interested in religion or don't feel a connection to God or feel, you know, it's one of their bottom priorities, because I was in that place. You know, I lived in that place. I was young in that place, and then went through a sort of a transformation over time that I don't think we can expect a lot of folks can go through with what you want to call it, a spiritual catharsis or renewal or connection. But I was blessed to have done that and have that. So that was what propelled me on the road to becoming an active participating Jew, becoming a cantor, which is the musical version of a rabbi, spiritual teacher, music, choir, and so forth, and then eventually becoming a rabbi. So as I reflected on this topic, just wanted to give you some context where I'm coming from, and I did some research, at least from the Jewish perspective, some things that have kept our folks perhaps from being as involved as we'd like to be in Judaism practice and worship and teaching and tradition, is assimilation and secularization. And I felt that way when I was a kid. I wanted to fit in. And fitting in meant not going to synagogue on Saturday when my friends were doing things for fun. It meant not calling attention to myself as somehow part of a tradition where we had been victimized and by anti-Semitism and so forth. So I understood that sort of wanting to kind of move away from that. People wanting to fit in and being different. So assimilation and secularization. People getting so absorbed in our secular world that they don't have a sense of interest or openness. I don't want to judge people, or understanding or insight, or they just haven't found their way to that. And people want to assimilate. And our Jewish people, in fact, in the research that I was doing, I noticed that our people, Jewishly, religiously, did better as far as Judaism goes when we were like victimized, when we were in the shtetl, when we didn't have the rights that we have today, because we were forced to be together, be in a community, and kind of practice your religion together. Once you had emancipation and freedom, and people kind of left, they felt that they could just kind of assimilate. So the other thing I understand from people, my people who aren't particularly interested, is they see religion as unscientific and not rational. You know, we live in a modern world, it's a technological world, look how great we're doing, right? With technology and science and so forth, so that somehow that's something they don't need to concern with. The baggage from the past, historical and personal. I've talked to people occasionally who will, with a broad brush, paint religion as the source of all violence and war, that it's done more harm than good. It's a source, as if the religion is at fault as opposed to people who've misused it and distorted it. Intermarriage is another thing that in the Jewish world is debated a lot. On the one hand, on the traditional side, you want to be staying within your faith when you get married, so you propel the future of Jewish generations and so forth. But other people see that people are going to marry anybody they want, that they fall in love with, and the hope is to be welcoming and embrace them, and hope that their children follow the Jewish path, but that's not always the case anyway. Anti-Semitism, I talked a little bit about that. And the materialistic aspects of the society seem to take precedence over the larger existential questions. I don't find as many people asking the questions of why am I here and who created me, and that just doesn't seem to be as important to some people. And others, finally, when they go to synagogue, they don't find it moving or uplifting, doesn't push their buttons, if you will. They do it because they're supposed to. We call them once-a-year Jews. I don't know if you all have that kind of once-a-year thing. So I think those are some of the main points, you know. And in fact, one of the great attorneys, Alan Dershowitz, who's always on TV, wrote a book called The Vanishing American Jew, and he gave all the reasons why we finally have the freedom to practice our religion. We finally have mostly a freedom, but people aren't interested, you know. So the goal, of course, is to bring people back and to set a spiritual tone, and that's what I try to do in my synagogue, is show them, families, people, that there's a value to what we do, and if you don't see it right away, hopefully you will over time. Thank you.
That was great, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank
You
you.
shouldn't have been nervous at all.
Oh. I'm nervous. Yeah, 3 pages of notes.
I got 4 words and he's got 3 pages.
If we can pass the mic over to
You want this? Yeah, you should have this.
Reverend Dionne.
She was saying her voice was so loud she didn't. I said, "You sure? You need this?"
Hello, I am Reverend Dionne Hall, and I am not from Hagerstown, so please excuse me as I have a plethora of experience over a lot of different places. And I am not also United Methodist by tradition and family. I'm actually Pentecostal. I tell my congregation I'm a recovering Pentecostal, but they know it's not true when I start preaching. We've extended that preaching time to be however long I need. So I've been here in Hagerstown for about 14 years, and I came down from Boston, as a matter of fact. Yeah, we'll have to talk later. I miss Boston. Some of the things that I see, especially within the older denominational church, is that our sense of tradition outweighs a lot of modernity. We are very much wedded to our huge stone buildings, gray stone. I got lost this week trying to get to a meeting because I knew it was in a big gray stone church, but there were 4 big gray stone churches on the street, and I didn't know which one I was supposed to be in, so I just kept going until I got to the right one. But that very much, in a sense, is part of what is not attractive to our children, is that we are wedded to those big stone buildings and their upkeep, as opposed to moving into a new way of thinking and a new way of being as we live out our beliefs. In addition, I really do feel as if, so I have this crazy family, right? I have 4 children, 2 older and 2 younger. I have a 22, a soon-to-be 21, a 14-year-old, and an 11-year-old. So at any point in time in my home, everything is really crazy, but I'm also getting a whole bunch of different perspectives. So, but I also have these 4 eyes on me, which are always looking to see if I'm practicing what I preach. Do I go in on Sunday morning and deliver a lovely service? Yes, I do. But do I leave church on Sunday afternoon and practice what I'm preaching? And my children love to tell me, Pastor D. With that face, 2 of them have my face, 2 of them have their dad's face, but whatever. So, but they're willing to call me out and feel comfortable on calling me out on not practicing what I preach. And I think there's a level of honesty in what they're saying, because I really do believe that the generation that I'm speaking to at this time are people who really want to be a part of the church, want to serve the church, but are not seeing their wants and their needs reflected within the church. And that's because for a lot, the church is stuck in the tradition and a lot of what they see being done in the name of the church. And so, I'm sorry, my thing keeps going off. And so that leaves our children without a sense of place. Where is their place within the church? Is it that Sister so-and-so has always done this for the last, 100, 200 years and will never give this particular thing in the church up? And if that person will never make space for me, then is this my place, or do I have to go out and make a place for myself? And, I believe that that's a good reason to leave a church. If you can't find your place, if you can't find a way to serve, if you can't find people who value you for the gifts that you bring, then either you need to create a place for yourself, or you need to go to another church that will. And I see that very much today, and especially in mainline denominational churches. And along with that, the tradition of Sunday morning service is the only way and time to have service in denominational churches. That's just not true, and that's really got to go. Were I to have my choice, I would not be in the pulpit at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning. It would maybe be 11, 12-ish. I'd have a couple of cups of coffee, done a little scrolling on Facebook. And that's another thing my kids make fun of me. I think social media is Facebook. They're like, You're not even on Instagram. Do you even know what it is? Yes, I know what Instagram, in case they see this film, yes, I know what Instagram is. I don't know how to link it, but that's okay. I'm going to find somebody who does. But worship is an expression of faith in God. And the more we say that there's only one way we can do that, the more people will lose, the more of our youth will lose, because we're not willing to be flexible and listen to what they have to say. And that's it for me.
Awesome. Let's give her a hand. Hi, I am Pastor Mac, better known as Pastor McIntosh. They call me Pastor Mac, but sometimes I think that's my real name. But it is Leslie L. McIntosh, Sr. I come from Ohio, born in Youngstown, Ohio, and I've been a part of Maryland for the past 10 years. I was born and bred underneath the Pentecostal movement. Both of my
It's an offshoot of the United Methodist Church.
we cousins. But both of my grandfathers were pastors, and I was born into it until I got to my own realization. At the age of 18, just like any young child would go and search and find out, have they been brainwashed? Have they been, was this just, I'm in it because I was born into it. So I searched out, and when I searched out, I found out the experience for myself. But I stand here today with a commitment, not just for my theology, but for my love for humanity. Because my love for humanity must first be seen first. And I believe all of us that are standing here with the different, Kathy and the rest of the HARC board for bringing this upon, because there are challenges that's in religion, that faces religion in all facets. And I believe that what might be a problem in mine, you might find a solution out of talking about it. All right? Not for the sake of humanity, because if there was not the form of religion, where would we be? But dealing with religion, and I want to piggyback up off of you, and just in case you talked about tradition and religion, not just coming on Sunday morning. On Wednesday, you can come to our Bible studies at 6:30. We have a Sunday service.
We moved ours to Tuesday because Wednesday was the day everybody does it.
Oh, everybody? Oh, all right. Well, we might move to Monday. but what I found out, I want to piggyback up off of her, was she was talking about tradition, and in our denomination and in our belief, tradition and religion has been segged into one word. They've taken tradition and they made tradition religion. And when you put it in religion, there are two separate entities. But when you do it that way, when tradition is, which is a set of body of ideas and the way I do a thing, but religion is how I live it. Tradition is how I do it, but religion, which is the practice of it. And we ought always to be practicing what we believe in, that is based upon our core. But what happens is in tradition, we call tradition religion, wherein the way we do a thing, and it takes the practice out of it when we want someone to be there on Sunday, want someone to be there on Wednesday. But we have made tradition religion, therefore giving a person an option that is not necessary. So you're throwing the good water out with the bad water. So I believe it's important for us in the place of tradition to change our method, but don't change the message. Because we have a different culture. We have a different culture that is in every arena. And as I spoke earlier today, it's almost as if there's a ring and there's a fight being had. And social media is winning it with lust, it's winning it with violence, it's winning it with all different types of things, but we're not on that stage because we're caught up in the tradition and not the practicing of actually being on that stage. So those things we have called that we shouldn't be in, we may need to be there in order to promote, in order to advertise, in order to evangelize what we say we believe in, because that's where the next culture is getting all of their stimuli that's really tearing up this world. So why? We should be in some of these places. So I have an issue with tradition being called religion and find ourselves practicing the principles. Practicing the principles is necessary. That creates discipline. But if we call that tradition, there is no purity in what we say we believe in. So I want to deal with that. There's another part that deals with purity. Internally, there's a, when our internal integrity has been blasted, wherein we're not living what we preach, we're not living what we teach. We're just come within these four walls, but when we go out, we're not exemplifying what we say we believe in. When we do that, that internal integrity, when it is not lived up to, we give the world an excuse not to be a part of what we do. They hear what you say, but they're looking how we live. So that's one part. And another part that's hindering us now, and it's been happening for a couple of years, but even more so with some of the violence and some of the rage and some of the things that happen, people are looking for security. And if the churches or the mosque or the synagogues have always been a place of a safe haven. And with the online, people feel that they can stay at home, but they're missing the most important element of fellowship. And that may be a security issue. They may not feel safe, and if they can't feel safe in the place that creates that safe haven, it will give them a righteous excuse not to become a part of what could change their life. So that's why I have my security that's here right now. Can I test it? Security! Yeah, he was supposed to come. Rewind. Security! Right. But put in the place, as we talked before, not to deter, but to bring upon that place of your safe. Why we have a lot of churches and just still, I don't have to give you the facts upon that. But when we become proactive in that part, it can create another level of comfortability to those that are on the fence. All right, I have something else up in here as well. And I'm going to let me go. Is my 10 minutes over? Because I'm Pentecostal, I keep talking. It's over when it's over. All right. And I do believe within that, when we find out that the traditions should set us outside of the four walls, we'll begin to deal with the 7 mountains of influence that we may not find ourselves at in the family, in the government, in the media, in arts and entertainment. But we feel as if that is a taboo, not knowing that has become the greatest stage that is encompassing and leading us to the place of immorality, no matter what your belief may be. So once we begin to get our influence within that definitely would take us out of tradition and into real religion, where we are practicing the principles and showing the real perfection that we have. That's all that I have. You can put your hands together for Pastor Matt right now.
If anybody needs a pen, please raise your hand. There are a number of pens here. So go ahead.
Whatever they said, same thing. The problem with being last is everybody has said everything, so that you have to think on the spot. Before I start, just again a little brief introduction about myself. I basically brought up in the UK, in London, the city of London. I studied there, did my university there, did my Islamic studies there as well. And then as soon as I graduated, I had an opportunity to teach in Dubai, which was teaching Islamic studies in Arabic. So I was in Dubai for about 3 years, and then I came back to the UK as an imam, and I was there as an imam for a couple of years, and then COVID hit. And then I was an online imam for a couple of years. And while I was teaching online, actually, there was an institute here in Boston who I was teaching for, who then asked me to come over. So about a year and about 2 months ago, I came over to the States, and I was in Boston till about three weeks ago. And then I was fortunate enough to join this place. So I've been around a bit, seen a bit of the world, and had a bit of time to assess different people, different cultures, and things like this. So when this topic came up to speak, it really got me thinking. Like, this is actually a very important topic of discussion. What are the problems that are challenges that are facing religion, and why is it that people are not practicing so much as they used to? And honestly, if you guys look at my notes, a lot of the points is exactly what they have already said in terms of assimilation, especially being a minority in a country, and your culture or your religious values are very different from the norm of the people there. It's very difficult to practice because then you stand out like a sore thumb and people see you as different. And the reason for differences can often lead to discrimination, bullying, and these sort of things. And I work a lot with the youth. So teenagers is sort of the area that I work with. So just generally we have discussions and chats, and I just ask them, how do you feel out there in the school when you're very young? And these are middle school and high schoolers. And I ask them, how do you feel as Muslims in the religion? So they say sometimes we're too scared to express our identity as a Muslim. So they will shorten their name from Muhammad to Mo, or something else. Or they will keep names, the parents will keep names which are common throughout the Abrahamic faiths, like Adam and things like this, because they feel that because of that they will get discriminated against. So I feel this is one of the bigger challenges for people why they're moving away from religion or not so practicing as they used to be, is because of being a minority or having something against you, or people looking down upon you. And unfortunately for Islam especially, we feel at least there's a lot of propaganda against Islam in the media, and there's a lot of negative portrayal. And we'd like to change that to a positive portrayal. But that's an uphill battle that we have to face as Muslims in this particular sort of environment where we're a minority. And the best way we feel to do that is to conduct ourselves in the best possible manner, to show manners, to show connections, to outreach programs, connect with different faiths and show this is not how we are and who we are. We're actually peace-loving people. Our greetings is peace be upon you. And that's how we want to spread peace. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, this is one of the first advices that a companion from him, because the first ever words I heard from the Prophet Muhammad were the following words, that you shall never enter paradise until you spread love. And you can never spread love until you spread the peace. And he goes, these are the very first words when the Prophet migrated from Mecca to Medina, and when he came to Medina, and I came to listen to what he says, because these are the very first words of his that fell into my ear, that you need to spread the peace. So this is what I feel is one task that we need to do. The other, and I think this is common again amongst the Abrahamic faiths, is that youngsters growing up in today's society, they have a very big, challenging uphill battle against the political climate. There are a lot of agendas politically which are being pushed down onto the youngsters through education systems and things like this, which we may not necessarily agree with. However, we're not allowed to express our views. The opposition are clearly allowed to express and be open about how they feel, but we as religious people, if we say anything, it's seen as hate speech or discriminating speech. And because of this, a lot of people are again becoming very quiet, and eventually they're losing their identity. And this is a very big problem amongst our religious communities, is that our youngsters are losing their identities of who they are. They're no longer able to be confident and say, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, or I'm a Jewish person, etc. But however, they have to be subtle about it or show it in different manners and different modes. And because of this, we're kind of losing the moral ground which we are in. And which is very difficult as well, because the education system, again, this is all through speaking through youngsters, they're saying that whatever we're taught in schools, for example, they're not being taught creationism. It's all evolutionism and atheism, for example, right? And at such a young age, we're open to a dialogue and debate between creationism, atheism, etc. These are all ideas which we can explore and talk about. But when people are at a very young age, they're not able to suss out what is right and what is wrong. So when you're fed something and you're told something that this is it, this is the truth, this is how it started, this is where it came from, this is where we are now, then they start doubting whatever they taught at home. Right? This is how kids are, this is how youngsters are. Whatever the teacher says, it's more correct than what the parent says. Right? I tell my kids are like 2, 3, and 6. Whatever teacher says is right, whatever the parent says is wrong. If the teacher says something opposite to the parent, no, Mom, the teacher told me this, and the teacher is right. So similarly, when the kids are taught at school something which is opposite to what they taught at home, they're not going to question the teacher. They're going to question the parents, they're going to question the tradition, they're going to question the holy book. And I'm okay with children being taught whatever is science, but I feel they should also be, just as they're taught to criticize faith, they should also be taught to criticize science as well. That scope has to be expanded to think both sides. Yes, this is also right, but this is also, think about it, like, put logic towards it and things like this. And these are just some of the things. And one thing is, in today's day and age, the lifestyle that we are sort of living and being geared towards, it's very materialistic. It's very materialistic. We don't, in our life, our goals are now no longer anything to do with religion, it's all material. By the time I'm this age, I want to retire, and I don't want to work past the age of 30, 32, some people are saying 35, I don't want to work past 35, I want to retire. And to get to that, you have to work very hard when you're younger. And they're putting everything in. And it's now just not like one person in the family working, it's both couple and parents are working to get to that goal, get to that aim. Whereas before we were thinking like, I don't need to be at the top. I could be slightly lower, but at least I'll have a family life. I'll enjoy time with my family, I'll take them out on the weekends. But now it's like, what, if I do overtime, I could earn that much more, and I could do this much more, I need to do this. So the goals are becoming very materialistic, and in that way, we're losing our religious moral and goals and objectives. And because of that, when the children see that, right, there was an advert in the UK which said, watch your speed because your son does. When you're driving, watch your speed because your son does. It's a very powerful advert, because although you're not telling him to drive fast, you're not telling him to drive recklessly, he's seeing you drive like that, or she's seeing you drive like that. And they will do that because my dad does it, or my mom does it, right? Similarly, if we're showing them that my goal is to get $1 million, be paid $1 million a year or more or whatever, the children are going to see that. They're not going to see that you're praying in the evenings or you're setting some time aside to read the Bible. That becomes secondary for them. The Quran or whatever. They see that now my parents, their goal is earn this much money, get a good house, get a good lifestyle. That's got to be my goal as well. When I grow up, I'm going to beat them. I'm going to be better than that. So the goals and morals are changing because we're not showing them the example that they should be leading. And this was actually my final point, is that unfortunately, because there's a lot of points, right? They can say so many points. I'm just summarizing, I'm trying my best to summarize. And again, like you said, as preachers, we don't know when to stop, right? Give us 10 minutes, it's 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. So, and the last point is, this is why I feel they don't have really good role models like we did. Speaking for myself at least as well, and I'm sure for people here, they can say, my parents were very good role models in this regard, or even their grandparents were better role models. And you can see that they had more concern toward the religion, and that's what their children took from them. And then we took from our parents. But are we showing as much as our parents used to show? So we're dwindling slowly down and down, I see, for example, my parents, my in-laws, every time they say something, they follow it by a prayer. God bless you at the end. Or may your life be better. God bless your life. May you live in peace. Every sentence they end with, everything they end with, there's always a prayer at the end. And I'm thinking, how many times do I make a prayer for my children like this? So their mind is always geared towards God, prayer and things like this. So when we're not showing this, ourselves, how are we expecting our children to adopt and take this on? So these are just some thoughts. There are some other things, but I think my time is coming to an end. But in essence, there's quite a few problems that are there, that stop people from becoming religious or practicing. And it is an uphill battle. But I think if we collectively come together, and I was thinking of giving some advice, but then I realized in a topic like this, those people you want to address are not going to come to this. So you have to make it so that you tell other people, they get thinking, and then they can pass the message on. That's how the message has to be. You can't give the direct message because they're not going to turn up to something like this.
You're preaching to the choir.
Exactly. So I think this is just a few points, just to summarize. So thank you very much.
Thank all of you guys for your reflections, and you guys did really good on time, so give yourselves a pat on the back. All right, so we have some pretty good questions here. So I think I think I'm going to kind of wrap up what you guys, kind of combine some of the things you guys said with the questions here. And this one is a good one for all of you guys. The specific question says, what are your thoughts on extremism in your religion? And that yours is the true way, and others are wrong or misled. And I want to tie that in with what some of you guys talked about, rigidity and tradition. I think that wraps into that. So if we can, one, talk about what extremism does, and what tradition and rigidity do, and then maybe just a few teaching points about how to overcome that. I think we can just start in the same order, unless somebody wants to tackle it first.
Go first.
Okay.
I'm going to go first.
Good.
Because he looked at me and said, go first.
Thank you.
So, if you guys didn't notice, I'm the only woman sitting up here. And there are many ways in which I can answer that question. But I think the most heartfelt way is to say that every time I enter a new church, some family leaves because they don't believe females can be pastors. Okay? So you may think of extremism in one sense, but I think of it in the sense of, well, women don't belong in the pulpit. Oh my goodness. And I actually had a family at one point of 7 people, whole pew, just leave because women simply can't be pastors. So in many, many ways, just having a female as a pastor, as a person bringing the word, is groundbreaking for many people. But then we do have the extremists, and at our time, I'm United Methodist. Everybody knows that the church is splitting. As of December 31st, my district, the Cumberland Hagerstown district, will lose 13 churches because they're extreme. They're very extreme. And so the best I can say is what my bishop has always told me, is to bless them and to let them go in peace. There is no fight to fight because there are times when people have their minds made up, and no matter what you say, they're not going to change their minds. And when that's the case, you bless them and you let them go. The sad part for me is when I see younger people who adopt these beliefs and kind of put their heads under a rug as if we're not in year 2023 and time goes marching on. Attitudes change. And I think in this particular area, that's hard to see because I feel as if, especially having come from Boston, where everybody is just lives together and it's just like, okay, I'm going over to my friend's house, but my friend is Jewish. So what? I'm going over to my friend's house, but extremism here. Walking into a church as a female pastor is always going to be one of those things where the district superintendent is going to have a conference with me in a month or two and say, how are things going? And the question really is, did anyone leave? Has anyone said anything to you that they shouldn't have said? Do I need to go in and rescue you? Because this is going to be a harmful place for you to be. Do I need to put you someplace else? And just lead with grace. That's all I can do, is just lead from a place of grace.
Thank you for taking that first. Is this working? Oh,
Yeah, turn it
Turn it on.
Oh, okay. One of the ongoing conflicts, I guess, within Judaism is that the conflict between tradition and modernity. How can we be modern Jews in the world as it exists today and still be faithful to our Judaism? So our movement, my fellow participants who are here today, my wife and my officers from the synagogue, it's a Reform congregation. And by reform we mean we have attempted, our movement has attempted over generations to figure out how to balance the words that are in the Torah, the words that are in Rabbinic Judaism, the foundations of our faith, with the modern world. You know, if the Torah doesn't allow, for example, homosexuality, then maybe we ask the question, well, if that's the case, then why did God create some folks who are gay? And therefore, if we're looking at a loving, all-encompassing, embracing God, perhaps that person is also made in the image of God, and perhaps our tradition, you know, is somewhat rigid, and we're trying to make it contemporary. We're trying to look at ways to make it relevant in our time today, whereas the Judaism of 500, 600, 700 years ago was relevant in that time according to the tradition and the laws then. Now we have our folks, we definitely have our folks who are on what I would call the extreme side, on the extreme right. In my way of thinking, they look at the trees, but they don't see the forest. They see very, very specific legal doctrines and teachings and religious practices, but ignore what basically God's intention was or the Spirit was behind it. So they'll become, and these are people sometimes who go from 0 to 100. That's what I'm talking about. You know, have very little background, but suddenly something hits them. They go to Israel, they become settlers, they become extremely orthodox and extremely possessive of the land, and don't see anything larger, such as maybe God gave this land to Christians, to Jews, to Muslims, and somehow we have to work it out together. So we have those folks, and I'm not, you know, I feel like I need to speak out against them sometimes, and I need to make it very clear, I think we all do, that if anybody tries to lump us into a certain, you know, category and say, look what you Jews are doing over there, look what you're doing, wait a minute. First of all, I'm not Israeli. Second of all, we all have our different approaches within the Reform movement. There's a wide variety of teachings, traditions, approaches, and so forth. And I'm sure that you feel that way in the Muslim community, that people look at you, they see an image on TV of certain things, and they say, oh my God, that's them, when it's not, because they don't spend time to get to know you. So, you know, I think we try to, one thing I'm doing is within HARC as vice president is trying to really, I feel very strongly about the interfaith work that I do, and that we share a lot more than we differentiate, you know, whether it's love of God, peace, justice, compassion, you know, the whole works. We share all of that, even though our particular approaches might be different. And I think that's why it's very important that we do this kind of thing and show people that we have a lot more in common than we don't.
Yes. He said he was going to throw some softballs. That was a fast one. Right?
This is the crowd.
That was the crowd.
Thank them.
Yeah. But I'm glad, because that's a great question. But when we use the word extremist, I'm going to deal with my faith, because I can't deal with anyone else's. Because once we begin to compromise some of our beliefs and some of our core values that has been written, we can be labeled a name to create us to compromise. So we got to be very careful. And I don't believe that it's in the idea of not agreeing. I believe it's in the idea on how you handle the wisdom that you say you have. The Bible lets us know that earthly wisdom is sensual and devilish. That means it has a human element towards it, a human conscious to it, that it puts more of their human ideas towards it. But then the next verse is vitally important. But it says, pure wisdom comes from God. It is first pure, it's first peaceable, it's gentle, full of mercy and good fruits, without hypocrisy or partiality. And when you wound up that scripture, if what I believe in, I can stand on it in love and still not receive your thoughts. And there still has to come pure, peaceable, gentle, easy to be entreated, full of good fruits and mercy. But what happens is we become debatical to the place of hatred and to a place of ousting someone. And we got to be very careful for that, because I do believe that there are some paths, and this is my belief, because I came up and I was a risen Pentecostal, but as a Baptist as well, but as a my grandfather, one was hardcore, the other was, he let everybody in. But my grandfather taught me, and I heard everything he said before I even knew what he was saying. But when I got kicked out of the Catholic school, in the 4th grade, no, literally, they kicked me out. They took me out of class and they said, you can't be in religion no more. We're going to give you an A. And they told don't bring them back next year. Because I took all the beliefs I heard and said, that ain't right. That's not what I heard. And I was adamant on what I heard. And they kicked me out of school. And I took it as a badge of honor until I got a little bit older. And I see the relationships I could have messed up, and how I could have, I didn't know in 3rd grade or 4th grade, but now I see myself in a place, in a new city, a new town, and given a gospel that I believe needs to be shared. But how can I do that if I'm sharing mine in a place of extremism that I'm going to hate you if you don't believe? Do you follow me? And the greatest example I can give is when Peter, not Peter but Paul, while he was Saul, he had right passion, but he had a perverted path. What he thought he was doing was right, and he was killing for it. He was total extremist. But then it came when he found out that he got knocked off of his horse. He went back to those same disciples who he had killed. And he ended up becoming greater than the ones he was trying to kill. So, had they killed him before he got there, he wouldn't have been, we didn't saw 3/4 of the New Testament. You follow me? And so, that's my belief, and that's my core, and how I stand on it, because I'm very, very dogmatic on what I believe. But yet, my love should yet still pour out in a place of purity. And that love don't mean I have to accept your belief, but that don't mean I have to reject you. And that's why I'm here even now, to show the love that has for humanity, because it's love that will draw us. So it's that extreme, so I can't fight. I need to hold on to the gospel that he has given me and believe that it's going to do just what it said it's going to do. Hope I answered the question.
Thank you for that. I think I agree with a lot of what was said. We have a concept which we say, dislike the sin, don't dislike the sinner. It means you may not agree with what the person does, but that doesn't mean you dislike that person. We can agree to disagree, is what we say. But just coming back to the question, I think it's very important to define what is extremism first. Extremism is a very relative term. Depends on where you stand on the spectrum, left, right, middle, wherever. Everybody else is extreme according to you, right? To find the middle path and to be on the middle way, it's very difficult. Especially, I think this is a question more pertinent to Muslims maybe than other religions, because we tend to get labeled extreme more often. And I think the core principle here is to try to understand the religion at its core. Don't base it on what people are doing, what people are saying. Base it on what the religion is and what the message says. From the little research I've done on this topic, I felt that a lot of this extremism was cropping and popping up because of social media. I'm not sure how people are aware of how social media works, but the way the algorithm has been designed is once you click on a link, you keep getting similar links and similar likes and similar sort of, politically that way sort of videos popping up. So once you've gone down a track, you're going to just get the same thing again. And especially even with the religion, if you clicked on a slightly maybe extremist speaker, you're going to keep getting people with that sort of a view popping up, and you're just going to watch, and you're going to get indoctrinated even without knowing. And this is why it's so important actually to go out, mix with people, actually speak to people on the ground, and not just somebody who's behind the screen, could be in a different part of the world, saying whatever they feel is true about the religion. And most people don't know the scripture, what the scripture says. They may misquote, they may misrepresent, take things out of context, and then you think, yeah, this is right, this is it. And sometimes when things are really black and white, people like that. People don't like to go blur the lines. No, this is right, this is wrong. He's a Muslim, for example, he's not a Muslim. And people are like, oh, this is so easy for me to understand. But when people, like you said, try to use wisdom and try to, bring people in with love, they don't like that. Because then they feel, oh, I'm compromising now. Without trying to understand what the religion and the book and the scripture actually says. But when you actually go back to the scripture, when you go back to the book, when you go back to the Quran, the life of the Prophet Muhammad, there's always a context in which things were done, or were limited to a certain situation, or about a certain people, or about something. But that gets left out, and the message is passed on without all of that. And then people just take that in and start becoming extremists. I think that's why it's very important not to take knowledge from online sources, right? I think it's a Harry Potter quote. Harry Potter, or somebody says that, don't take from somebody you don't know where its brain is, or something like this, for those who watched Harry Potter, right? Similarly, don't take from somebody you don't know and you can't trust. Right? You don't know that person. Unless that person, for example, a lot of other people from your religion, from your group, they vouch for that person. Okay, this scholar, a lot of people are vouching, yes, we agree with what he's saying, or we feel he's right, then you can start taking. Otherwise, stick to your local scholars, people who are local, who you see how their life is, you know day in, day out, you meet them for the prayer, you meet them for the congregation, you may know a little bit about their private life, you go out to eat with them, you understand their views, and then you can say, yeah, this is a genuine person. Let me ask what the religion says about this. Let me ask what the religion says about that. But nowadays, in Muslims, we call it fatwa shopping, right? Where people just shop and look for what they like. So I agree with him on this, but I agree with him on that. So I'm going to take a bit of this and I'm going to take a bit of that. And that's how sometimes people end up being extreme, unfortunately. So I think that's the way to go, is just stick with real people and don't go with what's online and whatever is heard. Thank you very much.
All right, we have about 9 minutes, and there's a lot of questions. So sorry if your question doesn't get chosen. It's not because I don't like you, or I don't know. I actually don't know who submitted it. I'm just trying to give them some easy ones, maybe. And there's some hard ones too.
We can take it.
You can take it. Okay. All right. So. All right. I'm trying to combine a couple of these into to group them into one question for you guys. Basically, there were a couple of words that we heard that people kind of jumped on, and there were some thoughts that others had that kind of coincided. So let's group into one topic, maybe separation of state and religion, and the assimilation or melting pot, and what is that doing, in a pluralistic society with multiple religions? What is that doing for religion overall? So assimilation, pluralism, and what is this doing?
Said we have how many minutes left?
That's right. That's why we have now 8. So let's try to
read the question again.
All right. So basically, in our society, we have a separation of church and state. We have multiple religions in one place, and we have people assimilating. We have this melting pot. Is this good for religion? Bad for religion? Overall, people's spirituality and their connection to God.
Gotcha. Okay.
Can I have dinner? You want to go first?
Hey. Okay.
So what I didn't say in my introduction is, I'm actually from Hartford, Connecticut. I went to Boston to go to college. My undergraduate and my first master's degree is in education. So I was a teacher for 25 years. And I retired from teaching because God said so. And that's the answer to that. Don't look for anything else. Our education system is built to educate children on things of the state. It is not there to teach religion. It is not there to doctrinate children. I get people complaining, they need to put prayer in school. People need to have a Bible with them. Okay, I can carry a Bible around, but if I carry it around while I'm cussing you out, what's the point of having a Bible? All right? And then religion is about your heart. The state can't teach you what you should have in your heart. The state can teach you a bunch of laws, and it can say don't go 35 miles an hour, don't drink and drive. It's religion that tells you why that's wrong. It's your heart that tells you why that's wrong. And religion is about seeking God. Your religion comes from your tradition, your family. And while I was in Boston, I was several different religions. I had fun in Boston. I was Buddhist for a little while. I went to a Catholic church for a little while. I went to a Pentecostal church for a little while. I went to a UCC church for a little while. I explored as many different religions as I could until I found out where my heart really belonged. Catholic church was just too quiet. You can't put a Pentecostal in a Catholic church. It's just not going to work. You see? And so the schools really aren't there to teach you your religion unless you're in a religious school. And stop assuming that schools are supposed to teach religion, because I don't know what your religion is. Usually when we say religion in school, in America we mean Christianity. But what happens when your son or daughter who's Jewish walks in the door and we're like, well, what do you mean you don't know the Lord's Prayer? Well, that's not in the Torah, or your son walks in and says, what do you mean Lord's Prayer? That's not in the Quran. We make a lot of assumptions when we say religion, and the dominant religion in the United States at this point in time is Christianity, but we don't even agree in Christianity, right? So how are we going to talk about teach religion in school? If you want your child to have a religious education, bring them to church, bring them to Sunday school. Mine is at 10:30. Bring them on. But don't send them to school with the expectation that the school is going to teach what your religious requirements are. They are completely different, and each religion has a different set of beliefs. And could you imagine bringing all those different sets of beliefs into a classroom? It would get crazy in no time. Before I left, and I taught, my last few years were in Loudoun County Public Schools. Before I left, I had 5 different religions in one classroom because the neighborhood that I taught in was extremely multicultural. So I had some Indians who were Muslim, but I had some Indians who were Sikh. Then I had some Catholic children who were Haitian, but then I had Catholic children who were American. It's 2 different Catholic churches. School is not a place to send your child to be taught religion. I'm one of those Christians who will tell you, please stop telling me that I need to have my Bible in school. I need to have my Bible in my heart and practice it in school.
Oh, amen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think separation of church and state is very, very important. But coming back to something the Imam said, I think I know what you were trying to say, which is that, because I don't have kids. We have 4-legged kids. But going back to when I was in school, even though it wasn't being stated, there was sort of an underlying message in the teaching of evolution that this just started on its own. In other words, it was an underlying sort of atheistic or agnostic message, and that in and of itself, and so forth. So what I'm finding now, as I've been a cantor, then a rabbi for the last 8 years, cantor, spiritual musical leader for 25, 24 years, is that a lot of people who have assimilated, who have done all of that, found materialistic, found money, found family, good and bad, all the good stuff, whatever, that at some point they're looking to come back to some kind of tradition or some kind of anchor. Or even if they don't feel that strongly about it, they want it for their kids. So you have people coming back who suddenly are there for, they want to be there for their children, for bar mitzvahs and so forth and so on. And I think religious pluralism is very important. I think we're blessed to have that in this country. And I think one thing I bet we all agree on is that there is a divine spark within each person. Some people might be aware of it, some people are close to it, some people, and I think that's part of what we should do in our work, is to help people see that divine spark, help them realize it, and then try to develop it. Because everybody has it, and I think some people have just kind of pushed it aside.
All right. We got a minute left. All right. I was going to say this briefly. The separation between the both, I may not be as politically correct as others, but I do know this much. There wouldn't be an issue if, as you were kind of stating, if there wasn't a hypocrisy that had been stated. It says one nation under God, indivisible. But then we allow all of the other atheists things to come in, even with evolution. That is a religion, because it's taken away the faith from the origin. Because you take away the faith, then there's no place for salvation at all. And secondly, and lastly, the assimilation of all. All I could really state on that, of all coming together, what you call it, pluralism, in a sense.
Well, pluralism would be us happily together but separate, but assimilation would be all of us one thing.
Oh, no, assimilation. Plethora, that other word you said there.
Melting pot versus a toss.
And I think that is vitally important, because it really speaks loud to what HARC has done. And HARC has brought us all together. And when we come together, we don't come and debate about our religion or about our thoughts or our beliefs, but there's a camaraderie within us, and there's a respect one with us, because we have a common goal. And that common goal is to make a difference and a foothold of a difference and a change in this city and in this region that our congregations can be a part of, so that we can be made known to make a difference. Some of these social issues, some of these other issues that we do have, we attack those in so many different areas that you wouldn't think that we all don't believe the same thing. So I believe once we can have someone like something like HARC that does not push the envelope of you just professing who you are, but seeing the ultimate goal of the common denominator that we have, which is the love for humanity that we all need to have. There shouldn't be any question involved. So I can't speak for the whole world, but I can speak for that which affects me directly. And that's my home, which is here in Hagerstown. And we have, as you see, all these interfaiths, and we're not fighting one another. We're not saying you're going to hell or this or that. But we're fine. But there's love, and there's purity, there's wisdom, there's a place for us to be able to really still yet make a difference that can show those that do not come in. Because believe it or not, there's not many of us on the Pentecostal that's a part of this HARC. Why? Because they don't see, what do you say, they can't see the trees without seeing the...
Can't see the forest.
Can't see the forest without seeing the
You
trees.
see the trees first without seeing the
They can't see the forest at all, so whatever the case may be. But this right here allows us to really show the love that we say we do have, even in maybe some of our core beliefs, but we have a common denominator, that we are yet still brothers one for another. Thank you.
And when you're lost, it's difficult to just add so much on, but I think I agree with what everyone said before, is that it's good to have pluralism as opposed to assimilation. We see early on, even in Islam, when the Prophet Muhammad, a case was brought to him, peace be upon him, in which there was a Muslim and a Jewish person who were fighting over certain land. And the Prophet said, it's for the Jews, not yours. The land belongs to the Jew because he saw the evidences on both sides. He said, this land belongs to the Jew, and said to the Muslim, that's not yours. Don't expect me to judge in your favor just because you're Muslim. Right? So we can live in a plural society, it's not a problem. In fact, I think there's a lot of good things which come with living interfaith, living with other people of different cultures, backgrounds and religions. You get to learn a lot, you get to develop yourself. Your own identity becomes stronger. Then you know yourself better as opposed to other people. When you're exposed to other thoughts and other people from different backgrounds, you know yourself better, you become stronger in your identity, and even in your faith, you're more connected to your God because you see other people doing that. As I was growing up, everyone's talking about their childhood. So as I was growing up as well, my best friend was a Jehovah's Witness. And I used to hang around with him all the time. After school, everywhere, I would go to his house and I'd be at his house for ages. But we used to always be talking. He was talking about Quran, I'm talking about Quran, he's talking about the Bible, we're going back and forth, but we're still best friends. That didn't stop our friendship, it didn't mean I hated him or ended up, and I spent so many years with him, and I've lost contact with him recently, but we've been together for a very long time. So I think being with other cultures and other religions is possible. We've seen it in history before as well, it has happened, people have lived together happily, and I think this is something which just shows the tolerance of religion. And I say, for example, it's a very easy example is, if I were to just pick for example, a soccer team, and I say, does everybody support the same soccer team? No. You have debate, you have very heated debate, you shout at each other, right? But at the end of the day, your love for soccer brings you back together.
Exactly.
Similarly with religion, you may have different beliefs, you may have different things, but at the end of the day, like the pastor was saying, love for humanity, love for God, it unites us back again. Although it may be different ways we're doing so. So I think it's very good to have pluralism as opposed to assimilation where everybody's happy with their own individuality and their own identity. Thank you.
Thank all of you guys. Excellent job. So I think we have some announcements from Kathy, and then we're going to start food. So that's the alert for getting the food ready for whoever has to do that. So Kathy.